Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, your deep dive into the latest legislative activity from Washington. I am Victor.
And I am Lenny. Today, we are unpacking a substantial slate of new bills and looking at the latest administrative updates from the House of Representatives. Let us start with a major piece of legislation addressing environmental and workforce issues on federal lands, House Bill 10,061, also known as the Wildfire Response and Readiness Act.
This bill takes a multifaceted approach to the growing risk of wildfires. It mandates a significant increase in using prescribed fires on federal lands and funds large-scale forest restoration through a collaborative program. For everyday Americans, particularly those living in wildfire-prone areas, this could mean better community protection and increased grants for home hardening.
It also focuses heavily on the people on the front lines. House Bill 10,061 proposes pay adjustments, retirement benefits, and mental health support for wildland firefighters. Plus, it modernizes agency technology with satellite monitoring and advanced risk mapping tools. It is really about supporting the workforce while using better technology to manage the landscape.
Moving from land management to housing, Senate Bill 5354 is the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Modernization Act of 2026. This bill aims to reauthorize and update the landmark 1996 Act to address housing needs in Native American and Native Hawaiian communities.
This is a massive effort to streamline administrative hurdles. It consolidates environmental review requirements and exempts specific housing projects from certain federal regulations, like flood insurance mandates and lead testing protocols. The goal is to accelerate development.
Right, and it extends funding authorization through 2033. It also expands eligibility for homeownership assistance to families earning up to 120% of the area median income, while giving tribes more autonomy over procurement and rent setting. There is also targeted support for student housing, homeless veterans, and homeless youth.
Now let us talk about trade and international regulations. House Bill 9892, the Stop EU Overreach Act, targets recent European Union environmental and sustainability regulations, specifically the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
The bill argues that these EU regulations impose unfair, extraterritorial requirements on American companies, such as supply chain mapping, emissions reporting, and deforestation traceability. Under this bill, the United States Trade Representative would have to launch a formal investigation under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974.
For our listeners who might not know, a Section 301 investigation is a legal tool the United States uses to determine if a foreign country's acts are unreasonable or discriminatory and burden United States commerce. If the investigation, which must be completed within 12 months, finds that the EU policies are indeed unfair, the United States could implement retaliatory trade actions.
It is a strong protectionist push to shield domestic businesses. Speaking of compensation and protection, we also have House Bill 10,115, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Reauthorization Act of 2026. This bill significantly expands the federal program for people harmed by nuclear testing and radioactive waste.
Yes, it extends the timeframe for qualifying atmospheric testing exposure to 1992 and adds new geographic regions, including Guam and specific zip codes in Missouri, Illinois, Washington, Colorado, and Ohio. It also increases compensation amounts, covers out-of-pocket medical expenses, expands the list of compensable diseases, and allows the use of affidavits to make the claims process easier. It extends the fund's authorization all the way through 2043.
That is a long-term commitment to victims of radiation-related illnesses. Next up is youth health. Senate Bill 5312, the PROTECT Act, establishes a Reducing Youth Use of E-Cigarettes initiative under the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
This initiative aims to curb nicotine addiction by funding research into youth usage patterns, marketing tactics, and health impacts. It provides $100 million annually from 2027 through 2031 to support state, local, and tribal prevention and treatment efforts alongside public education campaigns.
On the financial safety side, House Bill 10,112, the Empowering States to Protect Seniors from Bad Actors Act, addresses financial fraud targeting older Americans, which caused over $10 billion in losses in 2023.
It creates a competitive federal grant program, authorizing $10 million annually through 2030 to help state securities and insurance regulators hire specialized staff, upgrade technology, and educate seniors on how to avoid scams.
Let us look at aviation safety next. There are companion bills in both chambers, House Bill 10,077 and Senate Bill 1268, both titled The Safety Starts at the Top Act. These target large aerospace companies with at least $15 billion in annual gross revenue that hold Organization Designation Authorization from the Federal Aviation Administration.
Organization Designation Authorization, or ODA, essentially allows these companies to perform certain approvals on behalf of the FAA. Under these bills, to keep that authority, companies must include 2 labor union representatives and 2 aerospace safety experts on their boards of directors. If they fail to comply within 90 days of enactment, the FAA must rescind their delegation authority.
That is a direct effort to put safety and worker voices at the highest level of corporate governance. Now, let us turn to consumer products. We have Senate Bill 5302 and House Bill 10048, both titled the Truth in Labeling Act of 2026.
These bills address consumer confusion by setting uniform national standards for labeling packaging, food service products, and beverage containers as recyclable, compostable, reusable, or refillable. It actually prohibits using symbols like the chasing arrows on materials that do not meet strict, evidence-based criteria.
The Environmental Protection Agency and the Federal Trade Commission would define these terms based on actual waste management infrastructure. This ensures that when you see a recycling symbol, there is a real market capacity to recycle that item.
Another consumer product bill is House Bill 10,079, the Beverage Regulatory Parity Act. This establishes a federal framework for hemp-derived beverages, treating them similarly to alcohol. It mandates a 3-tiered distribution model of manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers, and tasks the Tax and Trade Bureau with enforcing labeling and permitting. It also bans sales to anyone under 21.
Meanwhile, Senate Bill 5364, the Rural Mothers and Fathers Choice Act, focuses on rural and tribal communities. It establishes a 10-year grant program for nonprofit organizations and tribal governments to create hub and spoke service networks. These networks will provide integrated support like literacy programming, workforce development, childcare, and telehealth. It also requires family advisory councils to ensure local control.
On the energy front, Senate Bill 5338, the Energy Efficiency Reform Act of 2026, aims to limit the Department of Energy's authority to set new energy conservation standards for appliances. It mandates that any standards must be technologically feasible and economically justified, and it explicitly voids existing rules on furnaces and water heaters. It also requires transparency regarding interactions with entities linked to the Chinese government.
We also have Senate Bill 5310, the Robotic Supply Chain Improvement Act. It tasks the National Institute of Standards and Technology with setting standards for humanoid robots and AI systems, while directing NASA to commercialize its robotics intellectual property for the private sector.
And finally, Senate Bill 5311, the Cabin Air Safety Act of 2026, requires the FAA to establish safety protocols for engine oil and hydraulic fluid fume events on commercial flights, including mandatory training, real-time air quality monitoring, and public disclosure of safety data.
To wrap up, let us look at the latest congressional record from August 17, 2026. The House of Representatives met briefly with Representative Craig A. Goldman, appointed as Speaker pro tempore. The session was mostly administrative, featuring detailed expenditure reports for official foreign travel by members and staff to countries like Zambia, Malawi, Cyprus, Spain, France, Italy, and parts of Eastern Europe and South America. The House then adjourned until August 20, 2026.
As we look ahead, listeners should watch out for the progress of these safety and consumer-focused bills, especially how the proposed trade investigations and aviation safety standards move through committee.
That is all for today on Capital Catch-Up. Thank you for listening.
See you next time.